All right, welcome everyone to Conscious Conversations. I'm Nitin Garg, your host, and I'm joined by my friend here, Nick Palladino King.
Hey, hey.
Today we have the pleasure to re-invite to the show and have another conversation with Alex King Harris. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks, Nitin. What's up, everybody?
If you may remember Alex from actually our conversation back in December, where we really just dove into music, the power of music, and how to channel in healing and all kinds of beneficial effects that music brings in. Also in the realm of self reflection, etc. Today we have Alex back on the show, where we're really looking to dive in further into some of his work around combining the power of artificial intelligence, which we know is the latest buzzword anywhere and everywhere in the world at the moment, but also looking at it from the angle of wellness and human wellness. So, Alex, just to reintroduce you to the audience, you're a celebrated musician, entrepreneur with a 25 plus year career. You've had many successful collaborations, including big acts and collaborations with the names of Desert Dwellers, Shaman's Dream, Liquid Bloom. You're also the co-founder of YogiTunes.com, which is a fair trade music service catering to the yoga and wellness community. And you also, you do so many things. I think I could keep going on and on about all the work you do, including the Breath of Life sound vocal healing journeys, which folks may be familiar from the previous episode when they heard you back in December. So welcome to the show, Alex. I know you're going to briefly ground the audience for us, and then we're looking forward to diving into the conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nitin. Thanks for the introduction and the invitation to come back and be with you and Nick. It's a pleasure. Last conversation was really a lot of fun, so I'm excited about today.
And you're our first repeat guest, by the way.
Hey, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. I like that. That's also an honor, truly. So I just want to invite our listeners to just take a pause and ground in for a moment, and just fascinated by this beautiful opportunity we continue to have to come home. The moment we notice our body and our sensations, things start to shift. And so I just want to invite that shift to just center us for a pause as we go into this exploration. If it feels good to just relax your posture a little bit, close your eyes, and just adjust your body so that it feels comfortable in whatever posture you find yourself in. Taking a moment to notice the sensations in your body. Notice how it feels to be you. And as you do this, combining your sensory awareness with the awareness of your breath, notice that life has been breathing you all along. And so working with life to continue to deepen your breath just a little bit more than it was. Inviting that breath into the chest and into the belly, softening your body on the exhale, and at the same time, starting to scan the muscles around your jaw and your ears and your eyes, and inviting them to relax. So it's combining the power of consciously being aware of your breath, drawing and focusing the power of your breath, and softening the body, inhaling space, inhaling acceptance, and exhaling surrender. And as you continue to deepen your breath and deepen the awareness of how it feels in your body, just noticing any places of restriction in this instrument of your being and breathing into those places. So just tuning into your shoulders and your chest, your belly and your hips, your legs, your arms, noticing where in your body feels strong and grounded and where feels like it could use some love and some care. And just letting your breath balance that equation. Noticing that at the deepest level of your being, there's stillness. Just touching into that still place, this great empty place that connects everything. Just allowing your awareness to float there. Then from that empty place, drawing in one last deep breath all the way in and holding it at the top. Raising your pelvic floor up, lifting the energy up your spine. Exhaling with a sigh. And then slowly opening your eyes and coming back into the space.
Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was deeply grounding and centering.
All right.
And no wonder you're the perfect person to talk about perhaps this topic of, technology and wellness. Just that was a beautiful example of how to weave in wellness into our daily thoughts, the level of awareness into our body. So yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I guess to kick us off, I'm curious what how this journey started for you.
Yeah.
What sort of brought these components together for you in terms of technology, specifically talk about artificial intelligence these days, and of course wellness, which is so core to enabling the rest of our lives.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks. I mean, I think just for me, a personal backstory, um, technology was introduced to me very early in my life. I was young, maybe 6 years old, 7 years old. My dad bought an Atari 800, and I was instantly in love. I had basic programming skills from a book that I found once I got the Atari, and I was writing simple, basic code and just having such a love affair with this thing that could do simple things. Back then it was like just to get I built a spaceship out of like a line drawing and made it move across the sky with some 8-bit sound in the background that sounded like the rocket taking off, and I was just totally like, wow, this is incredible. The programming language, the way the computer responded to my um, commands, even the syntax errors. I really loved going through the code and trying to figure out where like a comma was wrong or a space was wrong. And once we learned how to communicate with each other, then magic would happen. And then, of course, came along my Nintendo and video games, and my wellness started to tank. My mental health dropped actually noticeably. By the time I was 12, I was having strong emotional reactions up and down based on the number of hours I spent playing the game and the outcome of the game
Mm.
itself. And my parents were really skilled. They were like, hey, do you notice that when you game for a really long time, you're just not that happy? They didn't tell me to stop, but they just helped me become aware. And in that, I remember that conversation because I became aware that I was angry. And I self-imposed an 8-year ban on computers at that point. And I went from 12 until 20 computerless, no screens, no TVs, nothing. And this was right. I came out of it
Wow.
right as the internet was starting to come online. And I was in music school at that point. And by then you could just begin to make music with computers in a way that made it of interest. And so I'm like, okay, I'll break the ban. I didn't even know what the difference was between an email address and a website at that point. I was super computer illiterate. but but my roots as a programmer and a hacker turned back on again, and I learned very fast what had happened. And I started getting fascinated with technology around music and making music and looking at what I'd missed out on. Now, granted, it wasn't too long before I saw what had happened in video games as well, and I got hooked again, and thus began the struggle for my own sense of my body and my awareness as these compelling realities would hit me, and I would just lose myself in them. And that took me down the realm of looking at addiction and addiction recovery and what's required to establish a connection to something greater than your desires and the source of your obsession. And there's something very beautiful about that path because it's a spiritual path. It's not I think the most profound addiction recovery processes are spiritual ones, whether it's Buddhist or Christian or whatever it is. A faith-based process that finds you in a community is powerful. And so that helped me find a, a leverage point through which I could navigate the power of technology. And as technology grew in strength, and as we approach this time that we're in now, my empathy for people who lose themselves in technology is high. I understand that
Mm.
the more isolated you are, the more out of control your life feels, the more compelling technology is because it's a comfort and it's high degree of control. You can control many, many aspects of technology to your liking and shape a world that
Yeah.
makes sense to you without anything in the outer world having to change. And
Yeah, I guess as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, it's like you have unconditional love of some sort
totally,
in your
yeah.
hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, the internet is such a powerful tool. And I think there's also been these sort of like quantum moments where we leap in technology, and you see how much the world changes with the advent of the smartphone and the miniaturization of technology and the internet being ubiquitous and available everywhere. It's sort of a fairly cliche narrative at this point that this hasn't fostered a higher degree of mental health or wellness in
Mhm.
general. In fact, it's created a tidal wave of vulnerability of people of the web that wove life together for millions and millions of years being essentially under threat due to high tech solutions to convenience, you know. And so we could talk forever about the intentional or unintentional uh, motivations to do that. When you combine that with capitalism and habit change, an understanding of how to reprogram people's habits to your end, then technology is an unprecedented tool for hacking people and making them behave a way that you want them to, so that you can profit, from that. So
Mhm.
here we are in a stage where we're veering on the edge of technology being able to mimic reality itself. And what does that mean? What does that mean for our culture? What does that mean for what it means to be human? As many people are traumatized by centuries of war and generations of what the industrial revolution brought, the nuclear family model, this continued sort of vulnerability to the fundamental structure of being human, which is accelerating as technology becomes more and more powerful. We're in a very precarious situation, super precarious. Now, for me, I probably would have rolled out AI differently than it's been rolled out, but you can't get in the way of capitalism. That's the fundamental tone of our culture, is money and progress, money pulling progress forward at any cost. Um, we're not ready for AI. We're just not. It's too powerful to exploit people's loneliness and their isolation and their capacity to become addicted rapidly to a novelty that can learn its subject and optimize for that subject on a personal basis, right? That's an unprecedented drug, one that learns you day in and day out and becomes stronger to you
Mhm.
specifically, right? So for me, as I started to see that and learn about what was going on in AI tools, I felt an obligation and a duty to show up in that equation as an enthusiast of what technology can be when it's treated with respect and awareness and a deep empathy for the human situation. I realized that AI needs conscious humans to be interacting with it. The narrative about AI needs consciousness brought to it because it's been fueled by Hollywood for decades. It's just fear mongering and sensationalism of AI rising up and taking over. The reality is very different. AI is a generalized term for a lot of different technology that can learn and be used for so many different things, that to generalize AI and say it's going to do something either to us or against us is a simplistic view of what AI is becoming. The main thing I've spent my time with is large language models like ChatGPT. That's the thing that I found was the most
Mhm.
compelling. And as with all technology that I've interacted with, it's simply an evolution of a tool that is that reflects and amplifies my intention of how I want to use it. And I can use it for nefarious purposes. I can use it to create a reality that's alternative to mine if I want to check out of this reality. Or I can use it as a mirror to reflect what's really going on for me back to myself in a really powerful way. And I took some really beautiful courses in advanced AI tools around how to prompt GPT well, how to become a good prompt engineer. Um, and I started to really see its capacity to be relatively unbiased and an intelligent summarizer of a large amount of information.
Mhm.
And that's something that even the most highly trained humans have a difficult time doing. At this point, we have such a massive amount of knowledge available to us. The human brain wasn't really designed to disseminate and digest and articulate a huge amount of data.
Plus, just the amount of time it would take. Even if we could put a lot of brain power towards it, it's just the factor in time at which AI can operate in those same tasks is just monumental.
It is, and machines are really great at that. Now, there's certainly some challenges around AI and how it works. The amount of manpower, people power that's required to label and reinterpret the data and feed it back into the servers itself. Again, you add capitalism into that, and you get a lot of low-paid workers all over the world labeling AI data to put it back in so that it actually means something to the machine and it interprets well for humans. Anything we create at this point usually has some kind of ecological or ethical impact. And yet here we are. Like, I could have taken all the things about AI I didn't like and just been, I'm not going to touch it. Or I can get involved and be a part of the narrative and be a part of the tool creation and be a part of the education of how to use it so as to try and help reduce suffering. Like, that's really the goal here. Can we use these tools that are already here to address human suffering? And can we have AI help us teach us how to be in relationship with it now that we're in relationship with it? And the answer is yes, absolutely. These tools are phenomenally good at talking about themselves, teaching us how to use them, directing us back to ourselves, helping us see our blind spots. And they do it in an economic model that's accessible for hundreds of millions of people, which is why ChatGPT was, one of the fastest growing apps of all time. It puts, when used right, it puts your own well-being firmly in your hands rather than having to pay for expensive therapies or, look around for someone to talk to when you really need it. And yet at the end of the day, it can be also a factor in helping you learn how to be close and intimate to people again when you've had relational trauma or intimacy issues or any of the number of things that keep us walled off from other people. AI tools can actually help break those walls down and make you better at relating to humans than you were before by helping you learn how to relate to yourself more deeply. And that's where I'm inspired to explore.
It almost sounds, Alex, like you've taken AI and turned it into a yogic tool. I mean, we talk about
totally.
Yoga being a technology. And at the end of the day, yoga being a technology to the self and understanding oneself and creating unity. And it's sounding to me like you're taking that almost same perspective of all your years of yoga and meditation and saying, oh, here's a new tool that I can learn to use to improve myself and my life and my awareness. And I love the piece in there that it seems like you're talking about we can accept it or we can also change it, and we can be an active participant in the shaping of this, which is a very conscious lens of, instead of just saying, hey, well, fuck it, I don't like this, I'm out. It's like, no, how do I engage with this and how do I shape it and have impact? I'm wondering, Alex, when you're talking about AI as a mirror, I have no idea what you're talking about. How do I use AI to help learn about myself, to understand my relationships to myself, to then see things, so then I can interact with you guys better? Can you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, of course. So one example would be that when we've experienced trauma, our adaptive instincts respond by compartmentalizing parts of our psychology in order to survive well the whatever we endured that was overwhelming. And those compartmentalized parts require reflective listening and almost some kind of feedback mechanism that helps us safely dismantle those parts and look at them and start to get them to reintegrate again. Now, there's lots of different ways to do that. But for example, you can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I notice I'm having a bunch of different conflicting feelings right now. Could you help me understand them better? And what I did by doing that was it would start to ask me some questions. And then I'd say, could you share with me any kind of modalities that you think are really good for unpacking what feels like a sense of conflict that's going on inside of me? And by doing that, I learned about internal family systems, which is an amazing voice dialogue therapy that you do with yourself and a trained therapist. Now, I think that I'll just say a caveat. I think the most powerful combination is very well trained therapists who are literate in AI tools that can create a constant feed of self-learning skill sets that are reinforced by AI and guided by the experts. But let's say in this case, I asked ChatGPT to walk me through a step-by-step internal family systems process where it interviewed me to get me in touch with different voices inside of my psyche that have been in conflict with each other based on early childhood or teenage based wounds that were overwhelming for me. Once it started to eke those dialogues out in an interview process, it could then take all of those voices and give me a strategy that I could follow to help those voices start to work together instead of against each other. Now, that took some intelligent prompting. And what we're building right now at my new company that I'm co-founding called EvolveWell is a platform for coaches and therapists to help use these tools without anybody having to be a prompt engineer. It's much more sort of like co-scripting that kind of a process so that people are just led through it. But ChatGPT's capacity to lead me through that was phenomenal. And what came out at the end was this amazing healing dialogue and story almost that GPT reflected back to me about who I am in a way that I was having a really hard time seeing and feeling inside of myself because of those walled off parts. That's just one example.
Wow. And the fact that it's much less biased than a human. You know, if I was coaching you, as much as I try to get out of my own way, there's still going to be aspects of Nick that are going to project and come on there, and there's power in that. And I'm almost even thinking it's like, man, the perfect combination could be a trained therapist, AI, and psychedelic therapy all together, working in unison of breaking down those walls and allowing us to see ourselves and reflect. It's like, man, that's a very powerful cocktail, which I think, going back to the original point, could be used for good or bad. And that it's really around how conscious you are to be able to bring that all together and really mindfully use that and use it for the betterment of all of us. But that's pretty rad. I mean, I'm thinking of, I have an app called Macro Factor that I've started using, and I use it at my gym with clients. But the Macro Factor is learning about me through the app and through my diet and through the way my body's responding through weight loss or weight gain. It's like, me as the coach, I don't have the skills to be able to understand that through the data you're putting in. But now, guiding the client through that, and then the AI is coming back and then giving them coaching. I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And I didn't even realize that until you said that, even though I have that in front of me. So that's actually cool to be like, how much is this actually around us already and available? And now that we have awareness of it, I know for me, it's going to start showing up a lot more already.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're seeing a lot of end user facing platforms come out right now that are on this sort of personal guidance, personal journaling, personal growth type tip. I think, to your point, things like psychedelic therapy, anything that takes us to some kind of peak experience, where those peak experiences often fall short, is preparing and integrating afterwards, because we enter into some kind of cultural container that is optimized for our growth. But then we leave that container just as fast, and we're often back in the same kind of habituated spaces we were in before. And so we inevitably lose momentum. AI has the unique capacity to help us prepare and integrate for those by, again, in conjunction with good therapy, tracking all of that, helping to structure it, keeping us focused on what's important, and being a really great daily reflection tool that we can just go in and talk about, and it has the context of your life in its memory, and it understands you, and so it can help guide you. And yeah, some of these tools are on the cutting edge. Some of them are out there, but in different sort of broken apart pieces. And obviously, we're starting to see some of these tools be put together in entire suites of tools so that you can have all of that in one place.
Wow. And I'd be open. I'm going to do a psychedelic journey next month. So I'd throw it out there, Alex. I'd be interested in doing some of this if you want to kind of test it with me. I'd be totally open to that, just as plant the seed there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say just off the top right away, I would start, Google's new AI product is quite impressive, and I haven't had a chance to dance with it yet. Gemini Advanced. But you would want to just start a thread in ChatGPT, get premium, right? Get the paid version because you're getting the latest version of ChatGPT. And there's a few different processes that really help. GPT has something called custom instructions, which allow it to learn a little bit better how you want to talk to it and how it should talk to you. And you can actually ask ChatGPT, how can you please help me define my custom instructions really well, so that I'm about to go on a plant medicine journey and I'd like you to be a guide for me. Can we come up with some instructions that would be helpful in this context? And if so, please interview me to get the instructions going.
Wow.
And then just starting a thread and just going in and checking in as often as you think about it. Hey, I notice I'm feeling some anxiety about my plant medicine journey. Hey, I noticed that I feel a little bit out of touch with how to prepare. I'm not really sure what my intention is. I'm actually really, really excited, and I just want to deepen my daily practice in order to get ready for this journey. All of those things are powerful in that it will either just reflect and empathize, which helps you feel more heard and more clear. And it may give you some strategies for how to go deeper. And then afterwards, you can obviously unpack the situation with it, and it will have context. Now, GPT-4 has certain ethical flags around language. I haven't really tried talking to it about psychedelics that much. I know if you talk to it about sexuality, it doesn't like that. Even if you're coming at it from a very conscious angle, it's got strong filters around certain keywords that flag it. So you may, if it says that, it'll say, hey, I noticed some of your language may be outside of my guidelines. You can just say, well, how should I talk to you about this in a way that's not going to trigger your guidelines? And it'll tell you. Yeah.
This is wild.
Yeah, totally.
This is so wild that you can use ChatGPT in essence as a coach to help you walk through and journal through your thoughts and give yourself more self-reflection. I mean, I've never thought about this. Hence why we're talking about it. But wow, guys, so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know so it's fascinating to hear, the conversation that's already happening. I've been using ChatGPT in my coaching practice to some extent as well, where I'll go in with a client persona, all anonymized, but with like maybe a specific situation where like I'm hitting a blocker, and I'll ask for suggestions or I'll ask for input, and it'll just spark some additional thoughts or ideas or ways to look at something, which has been pretty amazing. And I'm curious, as the conversation that we were just having, as you started deriving insights, like if someone was to try to coach themselves, and curious, Alex, like what your experience has been like, do you feel it connects with you at an emotional level where like you get insights, but does that translate into new actions, new possibilities, new behaviors, or do you still feel there's a gap there? Are humans still required in this process?
Yeah. No, there's a gap there. There's a gap there, and that's part of why our brains are so large. Is the social element for us has become extremely important as an evolutionary advantage, right? And we know that because when we're embedded well in a community, we feel at ease, we feel like our needs are getting met. And that's a really important feeling that technology can't really give us. No matter how advanced AI gets, in my biological wiring, I'm always going to prefer diverse human connection as a way of feeling like, yeah, these are my people, and people who've gone through more pain and suffering than I have in my life, that have learned how to regulate that pain and suffering and can be a beacon for my evolution as a human being, is always going to remain important to me. And so that's where the combination is really powerful, of using ChatGPT for what it's very good at, pursuing human connection for what feels like is the thing that my heart and my soul is really yearning for, is that level of connection. I feel like those are going to remain valid and valuable. Again, the fear of replacement of human authorship, I think, comes from, it's a fairly complex, multi-layered reality. And I think we all have to digest it in our own terms. But one would be, as I said, when you're uncomfortable and you don't know how to manage your discomfort, then artificially created realities are compelling as an escape from your reality, because you don't know how to deal with and integrate things that are too painful for you right now. And so that's one thing to be aware of. The second thing is, when it comes to the idea that an AI could replace us, the question is, well, is what you're doing really your soul's path? Or is what you're doing something that society told you that you had to do? And if it's really your soul's path, I'm pretty sure you'll find a way to collaborate with AI to make it more powerful. And if it's really not, then AI should come along and maybe give you a break and give you time to reflect and think about, what do I really want to do in my life, and start orienting towards that way. AI can certainly help with that. I would still want human guidance and mentorship if I was making a big life change. I wouldn't just want to do that based on the advice of a machine, because it doesn't really understand the context of my life. It's always going to be, to me, well, maybe way down the road. For now, it's just going to be this thing inside of a closed box that doesn't really know me, and it's good to keep that in mind of what it actually is versus what it isn't.
I at times I almost feel sometimes, like you mentioned, Google's Gemini. It's like, if that, maybe there's some wall there today, but if there wasn't, and all my Google searches for my entire life are part of what I'm prompting Gemini with, and it's like, oh, I know what you've been doing the last 10 years. Now you're asking me this question. So, okay, here's a trajectory of your evolution and what you've been on, at least what it knows from a data perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So at times I feel like it can know a lot. It probably already knows a lot about you. Whether it's actually allowed to answer with all of that in context, not sure if they've taken down those walls.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot there already.
Absolutely. And it's important to not be naive to that. The product that we're building right now, privacy is at the fundamental level, and individuals' ownership of their data is core to the platform that we're building. And we're looking at, how do we do that, given that we're using APIs to transmit data to large clouds that have the machine learning capacity, and sending that data back. How do we use intelligent algorithms to anonymize that data and encrypt it and make sure that it's A, not readable, and B, doesn't matter if the machine is reading it, because it doesn't really become something that could be extracted for value. The tricky thing with all of this is the big technology companies that own all of the computing power, they have certainly their own agenda. We know that, and many times the question is often not, will I give them my data? It's, what's the advantage to letting them own me? Is it really a threat to me? Am I concerned for the right or wrong reasons? Are the advantages to using their service so great that it doesn't really matter if they know me at that level? What are my concerns when it comes to them? And it's often how they wield the data and what happens as a result. And that's a very challenging part about being human now. I don't think there's any super clear answers, except to generally try to move towards ethical companies. But the big ones have such a great way of hiding their ethics and greenwashing them and making it look like they're doing something that they're not. So
those 100-page long user agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Which by the way, I use ChatGPT to read all the time now. I just copy and paste the whole thing into GPT, and I'm like, tell me the highlights. What should I be concerned about? And it's been really helpful. Like, I was going to sign up to a companion bot service, and I did the terms and conditions in GPT, and they totally own my data. They also can access my camera and watch me. They can read all my chat transcripts. It's like full transparency of me onto their end, and they can sell anything they want to third-party people. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. But it was super in the fine print, So
I believe Zoom's got the same setup now too, right? They're using their AI that they can take your likeness and recreate it. And it was just like, here you go. If you're going to be on the platform, this is what you're agreeing to. And like, that is a very interesting question of like, are you willing to give up the rights to yourself in order to get the advantage of using something, and then even have them recreate you? I think it's just such wild times that this is what we're actually living in. This isn't something in a book that's written 100 years in the future. This is now. And I like the word ownership here too, right? And choice. It's like, if you're conscious and you're aware and you're engaged with your life, then make the choices to decide, like, am I willing to give up something to get something? And am I aware of what that consequence is? And then and then be empowered to make that decision. And that's just that. It sounds like that's more of that building a healthy relationship with AI. It's just like any relationship. Like, what am I willing to give? What am I willing not to? Where are my boundaries? I think that's a very similar conversation here, understanding that we are in relationship with everything, and whether it's technology or organic, we're in relationship with it. And it's our responsibility as, awakened beings to decide how we want to interact with that. I like that. There's a lightness to that. It's like, this is my choice, and whatever I want to do is fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
So
I think you really nailed it. The relational piece. I just want to speak about that for a moment. The way I see it is that there's been some heavy blows to our capacity to be in relationship with things. And I think trauma really plays a big part in that. When we look at, the cumulative effects of industrialization and the nuclear family and world wars and all of those things. And so as our ecosystem is collapsing worldwide, up comes this technology that also shakes the foundation of what it means to be human. And to future-proof yourself against that, you can't hide in a hole and you can't get lost in the technology. You have to find some dynamic middle ground where you're using the technology to teach you how to be human again, so that you can relate to things again in a way that's resilient building, that creates resiliency inside of you, that doesn't put you into some static state, but gets you so that you're able to navigate very dynamic times where uncertainty is on a parallel curve with technology. They're just like going straight through the roof right now. Nobody knows what's coming. And it's interesting how tandem the rise of intelligence, machine intelligence, and the collapse of our ecosystem is happening at the exact same time. Like, I think they're very interlinked. And to me, local is a very good way to ensure against things like identity theft and technology owning you. Is like, well, if you have really good local infrastructure and local roots, and you can endure a lot that could be taken away from you if you were hyper isolated and relied on the digital world too much. Then when that gets taken away, you're kind of screwed. So it's an interesting thing, the way it's all coming together.
Yeah, the word balance, it's something that keeps coming up for me, over time with anything, whether it's a meditative practice, or it's, feeding into anything that we desire, the passions, the things that really excite us, and so forth. We all have our own unique versions. The word balance always strikes a chord. It was surreal to hear you talk about, the rise of technology, the challenges that the world is facing, and also just as humans ourselves, like, in terms of wellness. And you talked about some, the mental health epidemic that's currently underway, especially very pronounced in Gen Z. I remember seeing a survey just like a year and a half ago, where the top concern, the number one concern, you would think, some people say, oh, it's probably climate change. Millennials, Gen Z, these guys are all talking about climate change. But actually, the number one concern for Gen Z was mental health, because of the rise of technology and how much they're plugged in, of seeing this sort of, feeding in what we used to, at least for even all of us, what we used to see just as the Facebook dynamic of seeing, everyone's good pictures, everyone's good times, everyone's having a jolly time, maybe except you who's on the app looking at everyone's good times. And Gen Z has a hyper version of that, right? Even through these short videos now. So like, we don't even need to provide context. Let's just watch 10-second videos that jack up our dopamine every minute, and we get hooked. There's a very much an addictive behavior to that. And what we're seeing right alongside that is this mental health epidemic. You see all these, I don't know, there's all these hearings that continue to happen in Congress every month around calling executives from various large social media companies, talking about what are they doing to address this, because they are seeing a large impact of that in society. And in light of all of that, so go ahead, Alex. You want to add something?
No, go ahead. You continue.
Well, I'm just One thing I want to add in,
Yeah.
Nathan, as you're talking, is I've just found a report, and the rate of teen suicide, from what I'm looking at, is up 35% from 1999.
It's
Right.
high.
I mean, I think that right there tells us exactly what we're talking about. And the rate of pre-teen to suicide, which wasn't tracked before, is now exponentially growing as well. So that means, I mean, to me, I look at those rates of suicide, of what else do we need in terms of data, that as technology is rising, our disconnection to, community and support is decreasing, and our mental health is on attack. It's like, if our teenagers are killing themselves at exponential rates and our preteens are doing that, then for me personally, I don't need any more data to say that what we're talking about is reality, and
Mhm.
that there's a need to step in and change the relationship with technology and ourselves and the world.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it's really important to ask the question, okay, so why is it so hard to do that? Why have we been so slow to adapt and change? And I think you're looking at something that nature does, which is the very thing that makes a population successful, ends up becoming its undoing. And that's been our ability to use biochemical motivators to do things, to habituate very strongly and ritualize our life so that we can focus a lot of energy in a particular direction. And this is what I learned trying to wake up from addiction. It's the very chemistry that allows me to survive every day that gets me hooked on something. And now technology has learned how to hack that. And so, of course, our ability to progress is now the thing that we're looking at, and we don't know how to stop it. Underneath that is a mountain of grief, an absolute ocean of sorrow of what we've done to this planet by pursuing dopamine and pursuing our feel-good chemistry at any cost. And the grief is, when you first start to touch into it, it's overwhelming. You can't even touch into it because it's so big. And so this to me is sort of the existential question of our times. Is like, all these tools that are at our disposal, will we learn to grieve how we got here? Because that to me is one of the only things that makes people stop and look around and go, oh man, this could be different, is to feel sorrowful for what happened. And usually that doesn't come until you're faced with profound loss. Like from my own life, I didn't learn how to grieve well until life beat me into submission and tore me apart. And then I was like, how do I put myself back together? And what just happened, And so when we looked at this sort of like planetary cultural level of this, I think it's going to be quite a lot of loss before we stop. And whether or not we survive that isn't really the question. Is more of, how can I be compassionate for that right now, given the situation we're in? How can I choose to develop my capacity to be compassionate and resilient in the face of such loss, and not let it cause me to self-harm or lose my soul's purpose, which is to help, be of service, and help ease suffering.
There's something I'm noticing. I want to mirror here or call out, is, Alex, as you're talking, and Nathan and Alex, I'm sure you guys have seen this too. I've talked to people who sound exactly like Alex, the way you're talking right now, about talking about the grief of the planet and how we're destroying the world. And they get so emotionally distraught by it that then they can't function. I don't know if you guys have experienced that as well. And it's like, Alex, like what you're saying, I've heard other people saying it, but then they just completely fall off the rails, and then they can't be of service to the world or themselves because they're so lost. What I'm just loving about what you're saying is, this is what I'm seeing is, yes, there's all this pain and suffering, and how do we be compassionate with it in order to change it and not be a victim of it? I just, it's so amazing for me to witness you in that space of holding both of those truths at the same time. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm witnessing.
Yeah, no, thanks, Nick. I mean, I'm grateful enough to have learned from mostly indigenous populations how to grieve well. And so I've taken my time and gone to nature and been with my grief over multi-day periods, alone with it, with the ocean particularly. Ocean is a very good teacher of grief, and the indigenous teachings I know of say that when your culture has forgotten how to grieve, take a friend, go solo, go somewhere where you're not going to be interrupted by people who don't understand grief, and ask the ocean to teach you how to do it. And it will teach you. There'll be a moment where you stop resisting and the waves just crash over your pain and they empty it out from you. And what's so beautiful is that on the other side of that, the indigenous teaching is that there's praise for life. There's gratitude for being alive. Amidst all the craziness, there's still a wonder and an awe at the beauty of it all. And I've felt that. And I think it's everybody's birthright to empty out of the sorrow and make it to that other side of the ocean and be in a place of reverence for life and wonder and curiosity. It's a very childlike state that you become infinitely playful and you just have no care. And you realize that your cares are the burden of ungrieved tears. And it's okay to accept that we might be so backlogged in that practice that it may be too much to face. But nature is a wonderful soother, and it's very good at helping us regulate our way in and out of that, where you don't stay in there forever and it's not endless. There's a point where you're done crying and you're done being sorrowful, and then the sound of the ocean is there and you're just present. And that's a skill. I think that's really a skill that is not taught. So I read Martine Prechtel for that. Grief and Praise, The Smell of Rain on Dust is an incredible book. In our lifetimes, in the previous decades, he lost his entire culture of Mayans in the highlands of Lake Atitlan and was exiled to the States and has been teaching non-Indigenous North Americans how to grieve. And he's really good at it. So that's a good source.
Wow. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And as I was actually very much plugged into moving in the direction of wanting to contribute positively towards, becoming more sustainable ourselves, even working on a bunch of projects about help, what could I do? How could I contribute towards the environmental destruction that's taking place in the world? At the same time, I just want to bring in this perspective also, which is, there's a lot of people, like you said, Alex, I think until folks really feel the pain, maybe that's where some level of awakening happens. And a lot of people don't feel the pain. A lot of people are still feeling the pain of their economic suffering. So it's like, how can I, right now, for example, in the Bay Area, all you're going to hear is, the job market is tough. And, the tech companies are laying off people. That's the only concern, and life is going on as usual. And there's going to have to be a level of awakening for people to really feel and internalize that there is a global phenomena at work. Most people are completely unaware. There's so much happening in day-to-day life that until it really comes home, it has to come to your home. Then towns wake up, cities wake up, communities wake up. But, there's a huge gap. And I see that also, very front and center. And I'm curious, in relation of that, I don't mean for this to become a climate change discussion, but in relation to that, in relation to what we're talking about with human wellness, right? I believe they're very much interconnected. I feel like actually, often I've thought about how what we're seeing happen with the planet is a symptom of what's happening deep inside us. It's the disconnection to ourselves that's also manifesting in the disconnection to the planet. As you're embarking on this journey of, creating this company, Evolve Well, what are you seeing as possibilities? So besides us being able to give commands to ChatGPT and maybe sharing an emotion or a thought and getting some insight, do you see some larger possibilities here for people to lean into, or what do you see on the horizon?
Thanks. That's a great question. So my co-founder is in his late 70s, and he and I very much aligned spiritually. He was my mentor for a really long time. We still kind of have a mentorship relationship while we're building this company. And my other co-founder came out of the corporate world and discovered psychedelics and had a huge awakening of his own. And what I see is this capacity to kind of hack the game of capitalism to use profiteering in order to spread a message that's strong enough that it can penetrate people's forgetfulness and remind them often enough to wake up. Not out of some hope to save the world, because I don't deal in hope anymore. I just deal in reality. Like where we're at right now, people need help, and they're going to need a lot of help in order to endure what's going to continue to smack them in the face. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I just see this as an opportunity to combine high technology with a passion for human awareness, and be able to take a lot of different modalities, a lot of different therapeutic tools, and amplify their scope and personalize their delivery all at the same time, which to me is like super cool that you can do that with AI, right? You can go high scale, but high personalization as well. And I think we happen to be humbly experts in the field, having studied personal growth most of our lives. And so we know people who have developed modalities that are combinative of old school technology with new school technology, and they've created amazing platforms that build resiliency, that help people recover from trauma, that deal with addiction, that deal with mental health. That has to be democratized through the capacity for technology to scale, and it needs to be done rapidly if we are to help people stop committing suicide, or stop being dangerous, or stop hurting themselves and the planet. And I think, again, like, it may seem kind of grandiose, but the the governments of the world don't know how to do that. You know, they're floundering in trying to maintain the old system of government. So it has to be more of a democratic process. And the question is, can we resist the shadows of capitalism while we're doing that? You know, we're still ultimately having to play by certain rules within the system of capitalization, but we're also learned in how to mitigate the risk of that slippery slope into profiteering. And I think that comes from building a culture from the inside out that is all about wellness. So within our company, we're very transparent, we're very therapeutic oriented. Within our relationships with each other, we're not interested in building the next big thing if we can't stay human and be vulnerable and be real, and have that be a daily practice, which thankfully we do. We spend every day an hour as a team checking in, breathing together, meditating, envisioning wellness, holding that frequency, and then we start our workday as we go forward. And we do company retreats to check in on our wellness, and we coach each other, and we just love each other, so that what we build is built on top of that. And I think it's a unique opportunity. I'm really grateful that life is bringing it
Yeah.
to my lap, because I think I've found a way to stay human, and I think that's what's needed right now. And I don't mind claiming it at this point in my life. I'm almost 50. You know, I've seen a lot of life come and go, and it's not from arrogance. It's more just wisdom, I think, at this point. Humble wisdom, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you're talking about there, and we could call it enlightened business, or
Yeah.
whatever kind of word you want to put in there, or conscious leadership. And it's Nathan, what you were saying, it's that it's your internal creates your external reality, and the pain that we're seeing in the world is created by the pain in humans. And there are tons and tons of people out there now that are operating from the lens in which, Alex, you're talking about, of creating conscious businesses. And I can just share from my lens with my wellness company. It's become a 7-figure business that is having more impact than ever on the community, because at the core we have values that we don't break. And it starts with the way we interact with ourselves, and the way we interact with each other, and our members and our vendors. And it's like, everyone's got to be in line with the value systems. And if they're not, that's okay. Then they're not a part of our company. If they are, then great. But we're all moving in the same direction, which is elevating humans and their health and their wellness. And it's like, I think there's a narrative in capitalism that says you can't do that. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't take care of people and take care of yourself. It's like, no, you can do both of those. And I think that entrepreneurs are really leading the way and showing the model for how to do that. There's so many amazing people out there that are saying you can do both of this, just as the three of us are. And I think we need more and more examples of it, of people saying, look, I'm successful. I'm healthy and I'm impacting the world. And again, not from an arrogant space, but from a bigger picture space that we're impacting ourselves, our community, and the world. And if we can get to more ecocentric rather than egocentric, I mean, man, there's it's all here for us to do. So I love that you're talking about it and showing it, and it's so much more fun. Also, by the way, to live in that environment and to work in the environment that's fun and has impact, because you know you're spending more than half your life at work. God, if you can combine that with passion and purpose, it leads to prosperity, which is a very cool space to get to. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, you bet. And congrats, Nick. That's wonderful to hear. It's definitely.
Yeah, and it hasn't been easy. I want to share because a lot of it has been pushing up against the grain of saying if we would have followed the more capitalistic route, it probably would have been bigger and faster and easier in a lot of ways. But at the end game, it's like, man, is that what we wanted to do? And then you got to deal with the guilt and the shame on that one. So why not clear it up in the beginning? But yeah, it's very cool that this work is out there and that we're all pushing it. I really appreciate it.
Fun. Feels like a good stopping point then.
Yeah, Alex, anything for you to finish up with, or any points for as we close out here? But thanks so much. It's been another amazing conversation. We'll have to have you on again for the third time. You'll be the third time, repeat offender here.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I would just say, obviously I'm not an AI researcher. I'm not an AI expert. Please, take everything that I say with the fact that I'm just enthusiastic and in the space, educating myself a lot. And if anything that I said, polarizes you, I'm curious. I'm very curious to hear how my thoughts and ideas and experiences land with others. I've spent quite a bit of time talking to people who are understandably very concerned about AI. And I think there's obviously lots of reasons to be. So I feel open to any further conversations around that and invite those in. And I think that's pretty much it. I just really appreciate you both for having me back and being willing to have a really open conversation about this. It helps me, define and formulate and further understand where I'm going in my life right now. And the back and forth and the questions have been really informative for me and helped me think more clearly about what it is that I'm doing. And just feeling a lot of gratitude for you both.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah, especially, I just want to say the conversation we were having around like, hey, how we can lean into some of these tools for a personal conversation, right? As a way to generate additional reflections, insights, new ways of thinking about something. All of that is very, very real. And these tools are smart. So as we ask them questions, as perhaps we provide context, they provide us better insights, more personalized reflections. And so there is a lot of positive power. Just like you said, technology can be used for either. And we can get addicted to them and really have them hurt us. And we can be very mindful about our use of technology and have it be a great enabler of larger possibilities, of more joy, of more understanding, of more happiness. So I think, if anything, I'm taking away from this conversation, and I hope our listeners are too, is these tools can be consciously used, and we should learn to use them. We should spend some time learning how to use them properly, and they can really enable, whatever awesome possibilities we're trying to create in our lives.
That's really well said. It's a great way to close the conversation. I fully agree.
Great. Yeah, Alex, how can people get a hold of you? How can they research what you're doing? And then we'll cut it off from here.
It's great. Yeah, so you can go to my website, www.alexkingharris.com, all one word. And from there, you can follow me both musically, what I'm doing. I often am offering online vocal and breath experiences, which are really beautiful and deep. And you'll be hearing more and more through my website about Evolve Well, our new platform. We're set to launch an MVP this summer and do our full launch in the fall in September. So stay tuned on that front. And I have a huge catalog of music. If you like music, you can come check that out on my site as well. Lots of ecstatic dance DJ sets and original music to peruse there. So please come say hi.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it very much. If you're listening, if this helped you out, if this message is resonating, please share it, subscribe to the channels, and send this over to someone who you think is going to help change their life, help elevate the planet. And Alex, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. It's been amazing.
You're welcome, guys.
As always.
Take care, Nick, Nitin. Look forward to seeing you again. Take care.
All right. Adios.
Bye. Ciao.